Okay, welcome back everyone to this latest episode of Rewire. I'm Amit Patel. I'm the founder here at Experience House, and welcome to episode 3. It's great to have Arun with us today, who's going to explain a lot of what he's doing, what he's up to, what challenges he sees in the industry as well. So let's get straight into it. Arun, welcome.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks for inviting me. Excited to be here.
Great. So before we get into everything, and we've just been kind of having a chat about kind of your expertise, and everything in your kind of your career in this space. Please explain a little bit about who you are, what you've been doing in the last 10, 15 years of your career.
Sure. So, I've been a portfolio manager for the last 15 years. Effectively, that means that people give me their pensions, their money to invest, and I have the great privilege of being able to put that to work into the stock market and try to grow it for them. And I really call it a privilege because it's that idea of people entrusting me and with their wealth. And it's money to them. It's more than just a number, right? It's a feeling. It's what they can do with it. It's a generational thing, and they're effectively giving me that power to say, okay, look, please help me kind of achieve what I want to achieve. And I really see that role as a great privilege to do, and a bit of an unsung superhero as well, I suppose. To all other portfolio managers out there and financial advisors out there.
Yeah, nice. I think you said two great words that I really picked up on there, especially because obviously we're going to talk a lot about AI today. Trust and feeling, right?
Sure.
And I think those are, especially when we start looking at like the capabilities of AI. Hopefully we'll come back to those two keywords throughout. So you recently are now working on a startup, building your own kind of platform. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yep. So effectively it goes back to that idea of knowledge and about when I was a portfolio manager, I was looking after a few hundred clients, and that was great. But then I've always had this passion for sharing knowledge, and thinking to myself, well, how about I could democratize what I have in my head and be able to make things easier for the industry and perhaps for the wider public, and what could that mean? I created my startup. It's called Meteor. It basically sits at the intersection between investment research and governance. Regulation is great. It protects people. Absolutely, I think it's very important. But it does, there is a friction that it adds, which kind of detracts from the financial advisor or portfolio manager being able to do their job, to add value to their job. Things like the client relationship side or the research side and things like that. So Meteor is kind of designed to tackle a number of those things.
Okay, perfect. I would love to explore kind of the how you've approached building it, because obviously that's at the underpin of like what we're doing now. We're helping organizations use AI as an orchestration layer with their workflows. And you talked about kind of regulation. Obviously, the Treasury has just released their adoption plan, and the Mills report talked about some of the what needs to be happening now to kind of help organizations adopt this. So if you now go back to your kind of talking about your platform, what has AI enabled you to kind of now start to kind of enable you in terms of building your platform?
I would say that without AI, I couldn't have even started this. It's sort of that sort of critical. And that's not necessarily because I'm using AI throughout the whole platform. It's we might get into later on of how it's used, but really it's about where else in history has there been this incredible shift to democratize industries. Like I can now, if I to some extent, create a legal document. Not a perfect one, but I can create a legal document. I could never do that before. How else could I? There are lots of other industries where AI can help me. I think like coding. Coding is, this is the perfect example, but I am not a developer. I have a bit of I would say a fair good knowledge of coding and developer tools, but I'm not a full-time coder.
Right.
And AI has just basically completely democratized that for me to be able to start prototyping something, wireframing something, you know, conceptualizing my idea,
Yeah.
and then being able to take that into something real. You know, handing that off to and saying, right, this is what we're aiming for, and
Yeah.
this is what I think it should look like. Let's work together to build it.
Absolutely, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because in terms of like this being the perfect opportunity. Because if I look back at, say, 4 or 5 years, I used to talk a lot about kind of this is the perfect opportunity to build something purely because of the access to knowledge. Like there were more and more platforms that were kind of putting out kind of industry knowledge. YouTube, there was a lot more YouTubers,
Yeah.
people putting out kind of their journeys and so much stuff that you could get access to knowledge wise. But now the execution layer is there, because that's what now that we
Exactly.
have, right?
Exactly.
And I think you touched upon something so great there, where you do not need to be technical, and you don't need to be overwhelmed by the technicalities of or the technology layer or the stack of what you need to be working on and building. You just need to have that vision, the right
That's right.
judgment, the clarity, the rigor to then input into these tools, and then it can kind of do that kind of lifting with you as well.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges you're kind of facing in terms of the platform? Then we'll kind of talk a bit more wider about the industry.
Well, I would say it's just data. From
Right.
my platform is very much data heavy in terms of because it's a financial platform. There's a lot of market data that I have to get. So that's probably my biggest sort of bottleneck. But we're getting through it, and it's a challenge, but challenges also present opportunity.
Right.
So we're working through those.
Right.
But yeah, just kind of going back to that execution thing, because I think this is it's such an important point that you make there, because it's the lots of people have ideas, right? But being able to execute them and you know what? This is actually how I feel like we resonated with Experience House.
Yeah.
Because if people know there are tools out there, but if you actually hand it to them and say this is what the tools can do, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the best tool. It has to be just the tool that works for them.
Yeah.
Handing that off to people and saying, right, now that you know what it can do, go ahead and build your ideas. Just start with a simple prompt and work onwards from there.
Yeah.
When you hand people that power, it's incredible what they could achieve.
Yeah.
And you will have ideas that so they will have ideas that you haven't even thought about. And
Right.
that's exactly, I think, what why I
enabling.
think we shared, and why we kind of met in the first
Yeah,
place.
yeah, absolutely. I think we were, I think maybe at a party, a kid's party, I think, and you started talking about
That's right.
what you were building, and all of a sudden I was like, actually, this is such an exciting space to be in. I want to follow on from that though, because if you look at, obviously, we're talking here about building something, but if you take this inside industry, where a lot of our work is helping companies or organizations redesign workflows that have legacy data, legacy structure. Yes, you can hand people the tools, or you can hand people the ability kind of start thinking like, hey, there's the possibility of actually redesigning here. But what did you need to unlearn?
That is a great question. I think for me, it was about starting from scratch of what a financial platform needs to look like. Through domain expertise, which I think is so critical now, is I looked at all the other platforms out there, and I said to myself, okay, what is missing from there?
Right.
Or what is it stopping me from getting to my work straight away? Why am I getting distracted? I've logged in to do something, and in fact, I'm going on a bit of a side tangent here. And so for me, it was like, okay, let's just completely redesign the interface to not look like a finance platform to begin with. Let's instead focus on what are the outcomes I want to achieve, and work backwards from there and say, okay, the interface needs to fit to those outcomes, because I want to enable people to just get straight into what they want to do. And that AI layer fits into okay, let's go from from your zero to 75% of what you want to achieve
Yeah.
in a very short period of time.
Right.
And that's basically what Meteor tries to achieve
Right.
in a short
Yeah.
sentence.
Absolutely, and I think you're absolutely right. So we like to call it zero-based redesign, like start completely scratch, outcome oriented or North Star oriented. And then there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen sometimes with organizations or teams because they're stuck with legacy thinking. The way that you kind of run your processes, the way that you're inputting your data, all of that has to kind of be redone. And I think at some point we're like almost like, well, it's good enough, but actually we need to unlearn, and actually there's newer ways of doing things. The technology is enabling that as well. And it kind of comes back to, you kind of talked about it, like, what is the job? What's the job to be done here? What do I need to actually be achieving goal-wise, ultimately to get to my outcome? And I'm sure you've probably built the platform according to those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a sentence there which really resonated with me. It's good enough.
Right.
And yeah, sure. There are things which we built which are good enough for the time that it's built for. But if you look forward, where is the industry going? Where is the world going?
Yep.
And it's good enough still going to be enough at that point.
Right.
And so yeah, that I love this idea of just taking a step back and saying, let's not kind of constrain ourselves on the legacy thinking and say that works for now and it's good enough.
Right.
Let's take on the big challenges if we can, and let's try and say, okay, what could this really be? Where could this whole movement? Well, let's call it an app.
Yeah.
Okay? Where could this app be if it wasn't reliant on
Correct.
the current state of the world and where shifts are currently.
Right. Or where the thinking and where the exactly. What excites you the most about this industry? If we were to look at, let's say, looking ahead, say 5 years, 5 or 10 years, whatever it is, what kind of excites you most about the space that you're working in?
Yes, for me, it's the big push to direct to consumer, okay, which is so in the US there's a 50-50 split between institutions and retail investors. Think like the Robin Hoods or the the trading apps of the out there, and in Europe that's sort of 25-75. So 75% of the money is controlled by sort of pension funds and large institutions, etc. What could the world look if you had the power to control your own sort of wealth?
Right.
You were the app or the whole industry gives you that education and that frictionless experience to invest your own money, and I'm very clearly distinguishing between investing and trading. But investing your own money, and quite frankly, if kind of fiscal policy has supported that, there's been greater allowances for tax-free accounts, like in the UK, ISAs, for example. I think there is a push for people to kind of take the onus on themselves. So, and the industry is catching up. And the industry is saying, hey, let's educate everyone. Let's tell them about what they could have, how it could fit into their life. And that really excites me, how, what the world could look like in 5 years, where people take more and more onus about, okay, I need to grow my own wealth, and it's on me to do that. And you couple that with the fact that, over the next 10 years, there's going to be £7 trillion roughly of wealth, which is going to be shift in the UK from baby boomers to millennials and Gen Z. So that and the millennials and Gen Zs of the world, they're not necessarily relying on the old way of doing things. They grew up in an era of smartphones and web-based apps. So how does the world look like that? Right. And so I'm really excited about that push and that wave, and getting onto that wave effectively.
Right. So do you see, in order for us to kind of get to that more 50-50 split, do you see that there's going to be a wave of platforms similar to like, is that kind of where your platform kind of is aimed at, that kind of mission there?
Yes.
Right.
So at the moment, the platform is kind of is aimed at financial advisors and
Right.
for portfolio managers, and to help them with the friction,
Right.
with the and getting them to do the valuable work, because I think that'll always be human. I still really feel that investing, while there's a lot of data and science to it, there is sometimes an element of art as well, and
Interesting.
that's where financial advisors and portfolio managers and investment professionals need that help. But our North Star is also about helping the society in general as well, to roll forward maybe 10 years, and maybe we have something that helps um, the general society as well,
Yeah.
about, okay, let's help you with that journey of
Right.
building wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think are some of the biggest blockers that might stop us, or from the industry progressing as you move? And again, I'll mention kind of some of the work that's being done now in terms of the adoption plans and the reviews and building sandboxes and signing deals with the likes of the Anthropics, et cetera, open AIs to help kind of get organizations the ability or access to start experimenting. What do you think are, in your opinion, some of the other
I mean,
blockers?
I'm smiling here because the easy answer is to say regulation,
Right.
and it's sort of the answer.
Yeah.
Yes, in Europe, it's like I said, I think regulation is great. It really protects the retail investors, but I think it's more. It's a number of things. The other elements I would say is like just that cultural shift of saying an ownership of the problem, saying if we were to reinvent this workflow, we're talking about thousands of accounts, millions of accounts, perhaps. We're talking about huge amounts of data. We're talking about an education piece, a product piece, a distribution piece,
Yep.
and someone wanting to take on that challenge and say, I want to try and tackle that. I want to really take on that opportunity and say, okay, I can make a change here. So it's that ownership of the problem. I think it's probably the
Okay,
biggest
interesting.
blocker.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually, it's the ownership piece has come up quite a lot in the last couple months, and a lot of different conversations I've had. It's like who's owning different parts, and I think when you start talking about workflows, especially when you talk about legacy workflows, there's different owners at different stages. Sometimes the owners don't even know what is happening in the stage before. They just know there's something coming out of that stage, coming into my part of the workflow, and then I need to output something else to continue on. So having ownership of the entire piece, or the holistic vision of the entire piece. And I think systems thinking, for example, then starts to play even a more prominent role, because you're no longer working on siloed pieces. There's an actual entire shift that has to happen here as well, right? And then you kind of talked about, like, going back maybe about a couple minutes ago, you talked about what investment will stay relatively human. What, as part of this shift, as we kind of grow in the next 5 or 10 years, should stay human, and AI should not kind of be taking over, or we shouldn't be reliant on AI?
Yep. So that I think I have to carve out that question in sort of two elements. So one is when you're I'm talking about from the client facing and relationship element here, but the clients still, humans still like talk to humans. I mean, we would be here right now talking,
Yeah.
And when you have a certain element, a certain level of need, then to have that as someone to talk to about your wealth, I think is really important.
Right.
I still think there is a lot of value in that, to have that expression, that tone of voice, that really understanding
That
what's
empathy.
going on, the empathy,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that I think will always stay human. And in fact, there's some great companies out there, really kind of tackling that, and I give a lot of credit to them.
Yeah.
What we're tackling in Meteor is slightly different in that we still think it's very important to have that human element, but it's the human being able to do the valuable job of being able to say, okay, I understand my client really well. I just want to be able to get on with the important bits of my job and do them well.
So it's giving AI the ability to do some of that heavy and critical thinking and lifting, but ultimately it's still down to that human judgment about what's best as the financial advisor, about what's best for the person I'm helping in this situation. Would Meteor eventually have like the ability? So you've mentioned that you're building it for the financial advisor. Mm-hmm. Would there then be a layer where the actual kind of the person on the other side would then have a login access to or access to do something there? Is that part of the roadmap?
Probably not at this stage.
Okay.
It's I still think that we want the financial advisor to have ownership of their clients. To have it's ultimately they have own the responsibility for that client, and we don't want to detract away from that. We just want to help them to be able to, essentially, like I said at the beginning, they are portfolio managers, investment managers, financial advisors. They are sort of unsung heroes in a way of being able to, they directly help their clients' well-being and wealth. Yeah. But also they sort of indirectly affect society, right? From choosing what they decide to invest into, you can make sort of impact investing. Things like, hey, if you want to go in, like renewable energy, for example, that still needs funding and investing into, and financial advisors and investment professionals help in that journey indirectly. Right. Slightly off tangent, but it's all interconnected, and they're making a direct impact of the world that we live in.
Right. So what I love about this conversation is kind of two elements. You're building something, but you also have a vision of kind of where the industry is and where you're going. So, and then we talked about this other third layer where, the ability to kind of execute. You still need ideas, you still need judgment, you still need kind of clarity of thought to put into a tool to actually start creating something. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about inspiration.
Okay.
Okay. We'll break it down first. What you maybe have talked a little bit about this. What inspired you? And it either could be like your vision for helping, or it could be a company or another platform that have given you inspiration for what you are building.
It's the helping. It's the education piece.
Yeah.
That's what really inspires me to build what we're building, to be able to democratize the investment knowledge and the huge amount of information out there into a really digestible, personalized experience. If I take a step back, actually, it's in the UK. I'm not sure about Europe and the rest of the world, but in the UK, if we talk about math lessons for a second, we're taught how to do trigonometry and calculus and etc. But what about the finance side? What about how to get a mortgage? How to use credit cards? Those are incredibly important things, and probably more useful to the lay person than how to do trigonometry. And it's about taking a step back and saying, hey, how will this world look if people are educated on finance and personal finance in particular? So that really inspires me to say, okay, maybe one day I'll step into education, the education secretary, and say, hey, let's try and do something there. But for now, we are that next layer up of saying, okay, well, let's try and help with the people who are trying to invest and grow their wealth.
Yeah. Such an interesting point and timely point as well, because obviously we now have a new prime minister, and there's been news in the last couple of days about kind of technology courses at the age of 14, et cetera. But the personal finance courses aren't still not on the table. Everyone talks about it. Everyone mentions it, saying later on in life, I wish I'd learned this stuff earlier. Absolutely. I wish I had access to this education earlier. It would have helped me kind of avoid some of the mistakes that I made, et cetera. It's still not being brought to the table, but all of a sudden technology is back in it because it's the big talking point, of course. as well. So yeah, hopefully you one day can make that push and out. But honestly speaking, it's platforms like what you're building, and it will start to kind of people will start to become more and more aware of this. So I think it's a piece towards getting there.
Yeah.
So that's the inspiration for building the platform. Are there any great organizations or companies that you think are out there that are kind of doing things in the right way, especially when it comes to AI?
Lovable. I really like the guys and the whole team at Lovable.
Yeah.
I think Lovable is a great app for someone who's effectively a no coder, not that tech savvy, to get started. It is brilliant. I think they've done some incredible improvements to the platform in the couple of years I've been using it, and you can build some really amazing apps on it, and really prototype very quickly.
Yeah.
The planning feature is brilliant. So I really give a big shout out to Lovable. But other companies that inspire me, I think there's quite a few apps out there. There's it's relatively new, but Dan Gold, he's doing something that's called Stratify. Fairly new platform, but
Yes, I think I've heard of that one. Yeah,
that's kind of giving that same idea about people investing and educating themselves on growing their own portfolio.
Yeah.
So there's a number of apps like that. But what I want to say about Lovable is that, and anyone who's thinking about building actually, is Cursor, Lovable, Windsurf, Replit, all of these, Claude Code, of course. All of these are, I think a lot of people spend time comparing the pros and cons of each. And take it from me, who's watched enough YouTube videos and to do this, but just choose something and try and go for it, because you can spend more time trying to see the pros and cons, especially when they're changing so fast, and instead wasting time on building something and actually just putting an idea out there. So it doesn't matter, they say the best camera is the camera you have in your hand, not whatever you got in your cupboard somewhere. And the same with these tools. Just the best one is the one that you get along with, and you can just easily start prototyping easily, because everything else you can work out along the journey.
It's like we have the ability to engineer things so quickly now, but it's still this blocker of over-engineering your thoughts and getting too much into I need to choose the best platform from the beginning. Like I was saying just before we started, I love playing golf, so I was like, okay, well, I want to also just build something just as a little side project. So I'm building like a journaling app for the mental side of golf. Started doing a lot of my work in Claude Code, then realized actually I'm not getting some of the stuff that I need to kind of simulate the app. Moved it into Lovable, boom, moving it forward. But I think it's just that keep going, just keep pushing. And I think that the ability to experiment is so great now as well. Less so when we're starting to build, like, say, workflows within a kind of a large kind of institutions, for example, or something that has to do with all that.
Sorry, but let's connect the dots then. You talked about your experience with golf. So basically, domain expertise. And then on the other side, workflows. So we're talking about. So you've got the domain expertise of what you want to think, the tools or the bits that maybe most people are missing because they know the tools exist but not necessarily how to use them, and then the actual workflow itself of how does it all stitch together to something that's of value, and that's, I guess, what you're trying to trying to put the two everyone together and looking at people and looking at workflows for companies and saying, hey, let's you have your expertise in your organization. How do you unlock that?
That's a lot of where the unlearning comes in and unlocking, but then also to the point that you mentioned earlier, what's the North Star? What's the outcome that we have to deliver here, either to the consumer or to a client? Could be a bank working with another bank, or whatever the outcome ultimately is. Like, how do we then use that kind of that opportunity to redesign that. But you're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
It's the knowledge is so it's there. Like yourself, 10, 15, 20 years of knowledge, but it's like just requires the kind of the unlock, the relearning,
Unlock
unlearning.
that.
Then we go.
Then let's show you the tools that you could use to kind
Yeah.
of to make some of these ideas
Yeah.
happen, and then let's develop that and take that further.
Yeah.
That is an
Yeah.
amazing journey to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that are there any kind of organizations that are out there that you think have kind of started to kind of really pick up on this and are doing well so far?
Um, so I guess I'm really in the whole startup world, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of startups, they are just great. The key to them is just continual feedback, continual, like, let's talk to our customers, let's kind of feedback into the what we're building and the product and all that.
Right.
Just cycle that through again and again. And the shorter you can get that feedback loop, the better it is.
Right,
You
right,
just,
right, right.
that's your chances of success are just
Yeah.
10x if you're able to do that.
Yeah.
So and there's a number of startups I could mention doing that,
Right.
but there's too many there.
Yeah.
But in terms of the larger organizations, look, I don't want to call out anybody here, but I think it's the
Well, it's positive. It's good. It's good ones. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, well,
Yeah.
I think there's a number of kind of fairly large organizations of realizing this and saying, we need to really try and shorten our cycle of red tape.
Right.
Let's remove this as much as possible.
Right.
And we talked about, you mentioned about the sandbox environments.
Yes. Yeah.
And planning, or adoption plans. The regulators in Europe love an adoption plan. It's like stop planning and just adopt it, and just and let people experiment quickly.
Exactly.
And that would be that's obviously I'm talking from a startup point of view.
Well, I think, and to that point, some of the organizations that we have worked with, and continue to work with, the ones that stand out to me are the ones that actually asked us like a year or 2 years ago, show us what's possible, the art of the possible. And they maybe were starting to set up a sandbox environment.
Amazing.
Or they were starting to kind of have people go outside of the kind of the normal working environment and start to kind of play around with tools.
Yeah.
But I loved that, like, the art of the possible. And those ones that were doing that then are now leading the way in terms of getting that more global adoption in terms of their entire kind of organization and working and staff. And they are now leading the way in terms of kind of the training that's made available and starting to kind of really work on workflows. But I think that art of the possible is so important. And then the sandbox environments to say, go and experiment, go build, try these tools, see what it is. That's a cultural a challenge and a cultural shift in many ways, which again we talked about a little bit earlier. So I kind of want to just round off this conversation with this conversation around cultural shift, because it is one thing to be building a startup, and you talked about kind of speed and getting your product into the hands of people to start getting feedback. That's a cultural shift in many ways that never happened before. We used to work in very waterfall environments where you'd build something and you might take 6 months or 8 months, then show it to people. Now you've got the ability to kind of constantly get feedback pretty much every day. If you want to, you're making those incremental improvements all the time. What cultural shifts do you think have to be made within the industry to start to see to meet kind of where the vision ultimately could be? Like, there's a great opportunity, but what cultural shifts need to be done now?
Ooh, good question. Wait a minute. The art of possible.
Yeah.
I think that's a great tagline, by the way. I'm going to.
You can have it. Yeah. Take it. Yeah.
But cultural shift. It's again, I'm only resonating from my experience of the finance world, and I alluded to this earlier about ownership of these big problems or big projects. Let's not call them problems. Projects, because in the finance banking world, what they want to do, it sometimes tends to be about, let's choose things that are commercial straight away. Let's choose things that are what can affect the bottom line.
Right.
from 12 months from now,
Right.
and maybe taking a moment and saying, let's just experiment quickly with 10 side projects and see which one is the most sticky and has traction. That I would like to see more of,
Interesting.
to see that unpacking of, okay, let's have this committee upon committee of doing a viability study, doing a market survey, and then all of that. Instead saying, I've got this idea, let's go for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to tackle this, even if it's a large problem. I'm going to take ownership of this. I'm going to see what needs to be pulled for this to happen. For the organization to maybe then say, yep, so this person is great. He or she has got this. They really have this drive to want to build something. Let's let them do it.
Right.
Yeah. Organizations spend fortune sometimes on various team building exercises and stuff like that, which is very good, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
definitely should do it. But when you have someone in the organization who's already saying, look, I want to drive this forward and I want you to help me do it, let them. So I think that is a sort of a really important change I would like to see more of.
Yeah. It's something that has come up a lot in some of the conferences I hosted conversations at. It's giving space for people within the team, to enabling them with experimentation, seeing what's possible, because that's not only getting them more comfortable with tools, it shows them what is possible. It's only going to benefit the organization or the team, because you're sharing, they can share that knowledge afterwards as well. But of course, I think one of the biggest blockers is, well, we have bottom line to think about. We need to get stuff. We need certain measurables that have to be achieved. And so experimentation sometimes gets dropped. But I do agree. I think that is such an important part. And to your point around some of the startups or companies that are doing this well, that will be embedded within them. That will be definitely there. And again, as I mentioned, the art of the possible workshops that they took 20 or 30, there's a certain bank that we work with that took 20 or 30 people out for a couple of days to say, we just want to know the art of the possible. I was like, this is amazing, and then you can see that they're actually leading the way in terms of, I don't want to say widespread adoption when we talk about like workflows, but I'm talking about adoption in terms of getting their employees comfortable with using AI, but also starting to build out like digital employees that can actually start to do some of that heavy lifting as well. All of that cultural, that's all big part of that cultural shift as well. Yeah. So what's the future for Meteor? Tell us, to close off, like, where do you see Meteor? What's your mission? What's your kind of like the you can say for the next 1 year, where would you like to be in the next year with it?
Yeah, sure. I think I want to just touch something a little bit on what you mentioned. The people's day to day, that if you're sat at your desk, to have everyone has their own way of doing things, even though there might be an organizational workflow. In that minute workflow that you may have, that's specific to you, that you're doing day to day, which is taking you don't realize that it may take you a couple of hours each day that you do it. Imagine having that. If someone took a day out and said, let's just learn some tools, could be AI, could be something else, that could really help you with this, and then put you back into your seat.
Yes.
That very personalized to you. Okay, this is something I do. Ultimately, it feeds into the wider workflow, but for me, this is an unlock now. This is something that is incredibly incredibly powerful.
I think that I'm glad you mentioned that, because that ties back into what we were talking about a while back about kind of workflows and jobs to be done. Like, what's the core job that person needs to achieve? It's unlocking something for someone else in the terms of that workflow, but that focus needs to be there. Now you could say, how do I use AI to actually accomplish that core job? That's there. And then doing that across the entire piece. But again, having ownership of the entire vision, it will be so crucial. So yes,
So
tell us
the
a little
the
bit
vi-
about
the vision
Meteor,
of
the vision for
Meteor.
me. I'd love to just know, like you don't have to go into too much detail, but like, what does the next year look like?
Look, for me, Meteor is an incredible passion of mine uh, to to democratize that.
Mm,
For the portfolio manager and financial advisors out there, there is so much data
mm,
of investment products, about portfolios,
mm,
construction, and very equally as importantly, the governance around it. The uh, In the UK, we have something called consumer duty.
mm-hmm,
There are similar regulations in Europe, and that is uh, taking away from some of the friction of that
mm-hmm.
is taking away from some of the valuable work,
Right.
and the two feed each other.
Mm-hmm,
If you can do valuable work, you can mitigate some of the governance issues that you
mm-hmm,
have. Okay, so for me, it's the next 1 year is really just about building that out as much as
mm,
possible. Really getting to know our customers, and to understand their pain points, and empathizing with them,
mm,
because having done it for
mm.
15 years,
Yeah.
I completely empathize,
Right.
and saying, right, we can help you.
Yeah.
We are learning as much as they are, and we want to try and use use the powers that we have
Mm,
and resources we have to be able to build something for them.
right.
This is all about. They should always be about your end consumer,
Mm,
and that's exactly what I want to try and
yeah.
make happen and
Right.
execute on.
What I love about that is there's two words that come up to mind that kind of summarize what you've just said there. The first one is the obvious one. It's empathy, like really understanding who the end user is. Make sure you're delivering value to them. It's outcome oriented, but also rigor. I think there's a clear focus. There's a clear mission of what you're trying to do, and staying focused on that. I think sometimes the challenge is, especially when we live where we've got the ability for, if you have the idea, the thought, the ability for something to get built now is so quicker. But being focused and saying, no, that's
Absolutely.
not what this platform is about. It's not. We're gonna not adding that in just because we can do it doesn't mean it's
Yes.
the right thing to
Yeah.
add in, and sticking to that kind of that core
When
mission.
when you start with a blank piece of paper,
Yeah,
you have an idea where you want to get to,
yeah,
but along the journey, there's about a million other branches that come out, and you have to say, well, maybe just take half a day out and say,
Yeah.
right, which of these are guiding me to the direction I want to go to, and which of
Correct.
these are things that are detracting me.
Mm.
And some of these are tools that are the nice to have in the future. And if they are, put them into that bucket
Yeah.
and revisit them, and maybe make a sort of mental, make a few notes to yourself
Yeah.
you can come back to on. But it is so easy, as you say, to in this world to get distracted from the mission, which is again why things like what you're doing of saying the having the outcome
Yeah.
as as part of the planning,
Yeah.
and then it's just so important.
Yeah, I think
So,
we've
so
always kind of
important.
led with outcome, the principles of our approach, and that there could be empathy as part of that, of course, and then prioritization, right? Like prioritization comes in, like, yes, you want rapid feedback. That's also going to give you ideas, because they'll tell you, well, it could do this, it could do that, and you're
Yes.
going to have your own ideas as you start to look at what other companies are no doubt inspiring you, but you constant prioritization to keep you in focus for we go. So hopefully next year we get you back on and you could tell us about the journey of
Absolutely,
building
I would love
Meteor.
for that. Yeah, I'd love to
Perfect.
do that.
Well, Arun, thank you so much for joining us today. This will be out in hopefully in the next week or two. Really enjoyed listening to your
Thank you,
journey. I'm sure we're going to collaborate in the near future as well. Maybe think about some kind of labs and hackathons and like that as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah. There's lots of exciting projects we're talking about.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, appreciate it.